I'm old enough to remember when David Letterman was funny. And part of Letterman's charm always had this Midwestern goofiness about him that he cultivated, that he talked about. Letterman was from Indianapolis. And I remember he gave a scholarship out to a college in Indiana where he attended. And that scholarship went to somebody who was a C student. So Letterman had this, he didn't come off as the most sophisticated guy, but he came off as a funny guy who could look at the sophisticates and laugh at them, laugh with them. And that's pretty much all I knew about Indianapolis. I just thought it was a place kind of in the middle of nowhere where, more often than not, you wouldn't have any reason to go there. But once you start learning about Indianapolis, then the city has a darker cast, a different cast, a more dangerous cast, a cast of lots of black criminality, lots of black mob violence, wildly out of proportion in Indianapolis. I mean, over the years, we've done these nasty stories in Indianapolis in the nicest neighborhoods you can imagine. I'm thinking of one where a couple of the fellows broke into a house, kidnapped, raped the mother and daughter, then drove the mother around from ATM machine to ATM machine. Everybody in Indianapolis said, wow, that doesn't really happen in our town. But then things like that just keep happening over and over and over, and every time it happens, they trot out they hired a black police chief a couple of years ago. They tried out the black police chief, and he reminds everybody that the crime numbers are down, they're doing their best, and you can go have your little picnic, with your checkerboard, with your wicker basket and chicken and buttermilk and checkerboard tablecloth, at the closest farmhouse. That's Indianapolis. Boy, Indianapolis hasn't been that way for a long time. And, I'm thinking of all the stories we've done about black mob violence at the Indiana Black Expo in downtown Indianapolis, where they turned downtown Indianapolis into an armed camp complete with helicopters, dogs, lights, motorcycles, horses. People got shot. I think one year 8 people got shot there. My favorite memory of the Indiana Black Expo, there's a cop on the next morning. It's a Sunday morning. 250,000 people, black people, were on the streets of Indianapolis going to the Black Expo, dreaming of the day when Wakanda would be up on the silver screen. And there's a state trooper, a fatherly state trooper, but behind him in the shot, he's talking about the Black Expo. Behind him, the streets are just covered in litter. Oh, did you know litter's a black thing? Anyway, they're covered in litter, and he's very patiently explaining how just a few people always wreck it for the rest of us. Yeah, that's why you had to turn Indianapolis into an armed camp for just a few people. So more and more people are starting to figure out that there's something strange about Indianapolis, that the people there, they never really got a grasp on what's happening. And by the time they did get a grasp on what was happening, the people running the mayor, the city council, the police chief, well, their one central organizing feature of their life is they're going to be in denial, deceit, and delusion about the level of black criminality in their town, except when they trot out a minister from something called the 10-Point Coalition, and he patiently explains to them, well, the kids are a little bit different today, so maybe we should start paying attention to them. Never a word about the victims, never a word about jail, never a word about the old school, can't do the time, don't do the crime. You know what I'm talking about. Why don't we run through a couple of recent stories from Indianapolis? I mean, why don't we, this one, there's a guy, okay, here's this. I think we hear just a little bit of the circumstances of this, but the circumstances are the guy's on a date. Might be a blind date. This black guy's on a blind date, gives his card to the cashier. They turn it down. Card was stolen. He owed $40. The card was stolen. I mean, the chick's sitting in the chair. He's up there paying the bill. And so the card is stolen. And he tries to run out the door. The owner tries to stop him, and this happens. I guess I was just focusing on, how the rest of us are operating out there in this real world. I mean, if we show up 5 minutes late for a dinner appointment in a nice restaurant, I mean, they're going to drop us like a pile of hot rocks. Anyway, Mr. Convict here. I guess the lovely ladies like a good convict.
And that attack is not the only thing he's now accused of. Fox 59's Alexis McAdams shows us his history and how police busted him.
After hours of searching, police found Maurice Dunlap here at this downtown park, just steps away from the spot where police say he assaulted that restaurant owner. After hours of searching, Maurice Dunlap is now behind bars after police say he beat a man so bad he left him in critical condition.
He's a public hazard to himself and to others.
We first showed you this surveillance video yesterday of Dunlap inside the Acapulco Joe's downtown. Police say he ran out without paying his bill, and when the owner chased after him, he started swinging.
This horrible, horrible person almost killed a man because he didn't want to pay a $40 food bill.
The owner of that restaurant, Grant Redmond, had to have emergency brain surgery and is still recovering.
He disrespected this entire city by acting like that.
We did some digging into Dunlap's criminal history and found several felony charges filed against him, including robbery, resulting in serious bodily injury, theft, and assault.
He has several instances where he has active warrants with the same type of behavior, the same types of crimes articulated in the same manner.
Last April, police say Dunlap ran from officers when they spotted him casing a store on the southwest side. According to court documents, he was actually on probation at the time, convicted of posing as an IU health doctor and stealing from employees. Right now, police are looking into whether he could be connected to even more crimes around the city. Tonight, Dunlap remains in police custody along with the felony charges he's already facing. More are expected to be filed.
I almost forgot to talk about how Indianapolis is home to the greatest practitioners of denial, deceit, and delusion in America. That's where the headquarters are of the largest group of journalists in America. It's called the Society of Professional Journalists. Yes, Colin used to be a member of that club. Yes, Colin used to go to the SPJ awards dinners and walk out with an armful of plaques, including on 2 occasions being named the best reporter in San Diego. So anyway, I know a little bit about the SPJ. And I don't think there's any group in America that spends more time and focuses more on diversity training, diversity in coverage, diversity this, diversity that, than the Society of Professional Journalists. There's lots of chapters all over the country. They're always putting on seminars. They're always reminding people how to cover these stories. One time, Thomas Sowell wrote a big column about my book, and he said, "Man, I mean, Thomas Sowell, he's the king, right? He's the king." And he wrote a book saying, "Hey, I didn't know how bad it was until I read Colin Flaherty's book." And he wrote a column saying, "Why aren't reporters reporting this? Why can't you report black criminality even a little bit, even raise your eyebrow at it once in a while?" So the Society of Professional Journalists hired a former editor of the Indiana Star, the daily paper there. He's a big dog in the Society of Professional Journalists, and he did it seemed like it was probably 2,000 words. It seemed like 200,000 words, where he answered Thomas Sowell in a very, very long article. And basically the answer was, here's how to cover black criminality in your town. Don't. So after I saw the article, I haven't looked at this in maybe a few months, but the last time I checked, the board of directors and the staff of the Society of Professional Journalists, there wasn't one black person on that board of directors. Not one. And so they're totally in denial, not just about what's happening in Indianapolis, but what's happening around the country. And so it's not just, and it's bad enough being in denial, but they're the ones, preaching denial. Maybe that's why nobody's really making a big deal about this triple homicide.
Learned that Metro Police have arrested a man that they believe is tied to a triple murder that went down last summer. Kenneth Lancaster, this man right here, is facing charges in the crime. We first told you about this last June when police told us they found Mark Higgins, his son Keith, and Keith's girlfriend Jessica Cart all dead inside a home on Forsythia Drive. Still tonight, we don't know what led up to that triple murder.
And just another black on white homicide, except this was not one guy, not a couple people killing 3 people. This was a couple of teens killing an old lady. But for all the talk about Indianapolis, all the talk about causes and excuses, there's at least one guy in Indianapolis who doesn't mind talking out loud, saying out loud what is obvious, not just in Indianapolis, but in lots and lots of other places. He's a lawyer. His name is Abdul Hakim Shabazz. I guess he's kind of a thing in Indianapolis now. I think he's a political pundit. He has a talk show. I think he has a law practice. And he wrote a column about Indianapolis a few years ago, that every time we dip into Indianapolis to remind people what it's really like, we got to bring out this guy's column, especially one quote from it. But this guy's column, he was a black guy saying, hey, what the hell's going on in Indianapolis? I mean, why can't old black people walk around Indianapolis without worrying about the fellas beating the hell out of them? Is that what civil rights was all about? The guy we're looking at on this photo, he's the guy who shot 8 people. Anyway, my favorite quote from that article was up on the screen now, which says, Indianapolis, you have a problem. Your problem is young black men who are out of control. Well, that pretty much sums up what's going on in Indianapolis. That pretty much sums up the best way to make the black kids angry.